Well, hello there, my studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast, your space for music teacher solidarity every week. Christina Whitlock here, your host and self-appointed anytime piano teacher friend. I'd like to offer a special thank you today to my super friends over on Patreon who support this show and keep it happening. Artists who support other artists are pretty much one of my favorite things in this life, and I am grateful to my super friends for partnering with me in this work. If you would like to learn more about supporting Beyond Measure and getting some great bonus opportunities in return, head on over to christinawhitlock.com/superfriends and we'll get you all set up. And now, friends, let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 254 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Cheers to trusting new skill sets. So every once in a while, I will find myself in a position where I feel like I'm giving the same speech to student after student after student. And when that happens, I often end up bringing you those conversations here on Beyond Measure because I figure if my students need to hear something, maybe yours do too. So lately, I have this crop of mid to late elementary students, and they all have the same problem. They haven't accepted the fact that they know more now than they used to. You could say that they don't know what they know, except it's more a matter of them not knowing how to put their newfound skills to use properly. Now, spoiler alert, as teachers, I think we often have the same problem, and we're going to get to that one in a few minutes. But for now, let's talk about our students. There are a handful of standard growing pains that seem to come for everyone at certain stages of learning their instrument. The first one that comes to mind is how by the time students get to the intermediate levels of study, playing the correct notes and rhythms is pretty much a given, right? Their practice time begins to involve a lot more difficulty in that intermediate stage because there's so much more expected of them. The demands of phrasing and balance and tone and articulation are so much more complex. And helping students understand how to listen to their playing, how to apply historical style, how to discern which practice techniques to employ, when to practice in small sections, and when to piece it all together. I mean, those are all big, giant practice decisions that have a major impact on their success at the intermediate stage. Now, again, that's just one major growing pain we see our students experience. But today, I want to focus on one that routinely happens earlier in a student's study. I want you to think with me about the beginner mindset for a moment. So we have these students. They come to us with very little knowledge, if any, about playing this instrument. Everything is new to them, and they depend on us to show them everything. Now, my hope is that we are teachers who introduce concepts to our students through lots of exploration and discovery and trial and error. There are ways to help beginner students approach the piano with some ownership over their learning process. That is really important. But even still, obviously, our students are counting on us to provide them with guidance. That's why we're here. They count on us to help them navigate new pieces. They count on us to ask the right questions or to point out when their hand is in the wrong place. If we're not careful, they begin to depend on us to tell them everything they need to know, rather than utilizing the knowledge that they're picking up along the way. So, as a beginner student, it's easy to get used to this process where you lay eyes on a new piece of music and then you wait for your teacher to help you dissect it. But there comes a point, often in that mid to late elementary stage, where it's especially important that students practice putting their knowledge to use. Now, I would argue this needs to happen continually at every stage of study, but there are some moments where it stands out to me more than others, and this is one. For example, this often comes up in piano study when students have to figure out their starting hand positions for new pieces. Even students who have accumulated decent reading skills will sometimes get stuck and say, "Well, I know I can play this, but I don't know where my hands go to start." Now, you and I both know there are basically two things a student needs to know to find their hand position. They need to be able to identify the letter name of the note on the staff, and they need to know which finger number goes on it, which should be indicated in the score. So I often tell my students, okay, left hand, I need a letter and a number. Okay, right hand, I need a letter and a number. So in this scenario, I'm assuming your student really is equipped with the skills to identify those two things. And when this happens, many teachers are baffled when students can rattle off the correct answers. They'll say, "Well, my left hand 4 is on C, and my right hand 5 is on G," or whatever. So in that case, the students have done all the hard work themselves. Like, they had the knowledge, they just didn't know how to use it, or they weren't confident in their ability to use it. And even more than just finding hand positions, I happen to have several students right now in this stage where they navigate new pieces pretty well during the lesson, but then they go home and they get completely overwhelmed. They're so used to looking at an unfamiliar piece of music, and regardless of what we did with it in the lesson together, they are convinced they don't know what to do with this thing. But of course, they actually do. But it doesn't matter that they know what to do with it if they aren't confident in their ability to get to work. Otherwise, what happens is they look at the unfamiliar music, they get a little panicky, and then that is followed by avoidance, like that dreaded comment of, "I'll practice that tomorrow," which of course never happens. Now, again, I know that they are equipped with the knowledge to figure it out. I wouldn't have assigned the piece if I wasn't sure of that. But if they don't know how to use their knowledge, or if they are not yet confident in their ability to use this knowledge, then we are not where we need to be yet. So, friends, please take this as a reminder that we have many roles when we are teaching our students. We know that. On one hand, we are here to introduce students to concepts and techniques and all of the wonderful musical elements that go into playing our instruments. But it's easy to miss the fact that we are also responsible for teaching them how to apply that information independently. And that only happens when we provide opportunities for them to do it without us. This means there comes a point when we must stop coming to our students' rescue in the lesson all the time. Our students need to build a body of evidence in their own minds that proves to them that they can trust the new skill sets they've built. So, yes, this realization is going to come with some verbal reminders from me. I am going to straight up tell my students that they don't need me to tell them the names of notes on the staff anymore. They do not need me to tell them where to place their hands. I mean, I'm happy to be the voice of reassurance. Again, I've been giving this very specific pep talk to students these last few weeks, and it's all about reminding them to trust the new knowledge that they have acquired over their months and years of study. But the verbal reminders only go so far, my friends. Our students need ample opportunities to prove to themselves that they know how to solve whatever musical dilemma is in front of them. I'm just going to say it like it is. Too many of us are out there approaching the lesson as a chance for students to prove their knowledge to their teachers. But that's not actually the point of music study, is it? We want students to prove their knowledge to themselves. Our students need to feel equipped to tackle the challenges in front of them, and that only comes through a steady routine of repetition over time. I know I've said it 8 million times on this show, but if your students are leaving your studio with any looming question marks over how to achieve their practice assignments, they are not set up for success. They are set up to go home and feel confused or intimidated or discouraged. And nothing poisons the water of music study more than those 3 emotions. So, I guess the reminder today is to encourage students to recognize that their skill sets have grown over time. Once your students can identify notes on the staff and they can read by intervals and they can identify rhythmic patterns and place them in the context of meter, I mean, those are enormous accomplishments to celebrate and to acknowledge. And the way to do that is to get your students using them in as many different scenarios as possible. Now, I promised you I would address the teacher spin on this topic, so here goes. Just like your students, you, my teacher friend, are gaining new skill sets in every season of life. We all have areas that we perceive as weaknesses in our teaching, and hopefully we are actively taking steps to strengthen whatever those shortcomings may be. But here's the thing, once you acquire new knowledge, it's up to you to change the narrative. You need to trust your new skill sets. Maybe you don't think of yourself as a performer and that bothers you. So take some lessons. Find a gig playing for a retirement community or an elementary school music program. Start with something small stakes. Acknowledge your growth in that area as you pick up some experience, and then continue seeking out scenarios to repeat and build your body of supporting evidence. Repeated action is the only way to prove yourself a changed person. Perhaps you don't think you communicate well with studio families. Well, guess what? The more you communicate, the better you're going to get at it. The more you do it, the easier it will become. So acknowledge the points of growth and keep repeating those communications to build your body of evidence to support that you can indeed communicate well. As teachers, we are always learning. At least we should be. We learn to relate better to challenging students over time. We learn more repertoire. We learn more effective ways of teaching technique. We learn so much. Just don't neglect the importance of reflecting on what you've been learning this season so you don't find yourself holding on to old narratives. Don't just collect knowledge. I talked about that back in episode 231, but be sure that you are putting new skills to work over and over and over again. So the question is this: is there an area in teaching or in life where you need to acknowledge a new skill set? Are you holding on to an outdated narrative that you're not great at something? Seek out opportunities to prove your fears wrong. Build your supporting body of evidence. Okay? Okay. Now, before we go, I want to address a lingering question that I'm sure some of you are asking. You're probably wondering, how do we get our students to these points where they do feel confident decoding the musical notation in front of them? How do we get them to understand intervallic reading and feeling confident approaching the staff? Well, obviously, I mentioned repetition, but it's more complicated than that. We have to make sure we are repeating the right things, and it's not always as obvious as we think it should be. Let's go back to that earlier example of finding hand positions at the start of a piece. Now, a lot of teachers think that they are presenting adequate opportunities for students to find starting hand positions because they assign them 2 or 3 new pieces every week. Obviously, students will have to practice finding those positions, and 2 or 3 pieces should be enough, right? Well, I beg to differ. Here's the thing. When a student is assigned a piece, they are met with an onslaught of information. They know the drill. They are going to be expected to practice this piece all week. So they're not just thinking about finding their hand position. Their brains are going wild with sorting through the many details in front of them and the many feelings that they are experiencing as a result. So what if, instead, we took out all of those other expectations and we just concentrated on finding hand positions? What if we showed our students 6, 7, or 8 pieces each lesson for a few weeks so they could develop confidence in that very important skill? They're not going to play these other pieces. They simply find the hand positions and call it a day. I'm here to tell you, spending 3 or 4 minutes on that single activity for a few weeks can be an absolute game changer. Some of you are listening and nodding along because you've already heard me say this. In January, I walked 50 teachers through a trial run of my newest program called Building Better Music Readers. Now, this program is a 12-week journey that spends its time dissecting the way that we teach staff notation. It's full of these micro steps like I'm describing here. And the idea is to pinpoint every skill necessary to develop competent reading skills. Now, feedback from my first group was wildly enthusiastic, and I am delighted to tell you that Building Better Music Readers is now officially available for purchase. So you can simply head to ChristinaWhitlock.com/readers for all that information. And that link is also in today's show notes, along with lots of other fun links. So friends, that's a big announcement from me today. Building Better Music Readers has consumed a lot of my brain power the last few months, and I am ecstatic to know that other teachers have found it valuable. There is a $20 coupon code available for this first week of sale. You just need to enter code podcast20, all lowercase letters, at purchase. So, on that celebratory note, let's have a toast and then we'll get out of here, shall we? Studio music teachers from all around the world, today we raise our glasses together, acknowledging the fact that learning new things and knowing how to use the new things we've learned are two very different skills. We carry a responsibility as teachers to help students do both parts. We introduce them to new skill sets, but we must also equip them to know how to use them. May we encourage our students to trust what they know, and may we then look ourselves in the mirror and give ourselves the very same reminder. Cheers to all of us who are committed to growing on our teacher journeys. I know you're out there with me. Hear, hear. That's all I've got for episode 254, friends. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all kinds of relevant links, including how to purchase Building Better Music Readers and how to join the Super Friends community because, guess what? It's Teachers Teaching Teachers Week, and we have a great piece to study together this week. All right, I'll be back in your ears next Monday. Until then, onward and upward we go.